Hey, welcome, folks. Glad to have you with us. Glad to be with you. Roger Pilon is with us. He is the founder and director of the Cato Institute's Center for Constitutional Studies, and I've known him for years. Just knows the Constitution backwards and forwards, the Federalist Papers, the whole, frankly, the guiding principles the founding fathers had when they created the country. And so we thought on this day, this special day, it would be great to have Roger come on and talk about those things. We've been talking about the Constitution and the things that have changed in it, and we had to take a pause, and now we bring it back. Roger, welcome back.
Well, thank you. And what we were talking about, Gary, was regulation and how it operates within the theory of rights that stands behind the Constitution. That theory of rights, by the way, was, of course, outlined by Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence. And in doing so, he was drawing upon John Locke's Second Treatise of Government, which was written in 1690, which itself drew upon the 500 years of common law that evolved in England, which set forth the theory of rights. And it's a theory, as I said before the break, that is rooted in property and contract. But eventually you have to turn to regulations, and some of those regulations, many of them are perfectly legitimate because what they do is flesh out fully the theory of rights, the reason, foundation of rights. I will get you good ways down the road, but eventually you run into the need to turn to values like with cases of nuisance, risk, and so forth. And so that is all perfectly legitimate regulation. But today what we have is so many regulations that are actually what are called redistributive regulations. They take rights that belong to one person and give them, in effect, to another person. And we have countless examples I was just mentioning before the break that before these kinds of regulations, hiring, firing, promotion, and so forth, was done in an at-will basis. That is to say, you could you worked for your employer as long as you wanted to, and you were free to leave anytime you wanted to, and he was free to terminate you anytime you wanted to. It was a mutual relationship in that way. Today, the employer is roped in by all kinds of restrictions on who he can hire, who he can promote, who he can fire, how he can do it, and so on and so forth. And if he runs afoul of these, he finds himself in court charged with the most draconian sanctions for having done what he did or not having, or having done it in the way that he did. And it's oftentimes very subjective. And so this is the kind of regulation, and I'm just picking one area, employment, but I could have picked 101 other areas in which we see the same thing. Look at the Obamacare regulations, for example, which are being written as we speak. And all these regulations, what they do is take from some and give to the others. They require young people to pay far more for health insurance than they would be required to pay if they were buying it in a free market, and therefore they subsidize older people and require and allow them to pay much less for their insurance than they would have to pay if they were buying it in a free market. There's another perfect example of taking the rights of the young people to buy at a lower price, which the market would provide for them, and requiring them to pay more so that the older people can buy at a lower price than they otherwise would be able to do if they were buying in the market. It's redistributive regulation.
And let's roll back here to the earlier segment in the program. When I listen to liberals defending, or progressives, I think more accurately, when I hear them defending this, they say, well, that's the general welfare clause. You got to do this for the general welfare of the, of the country. But that doesn't hold up.
Well, that's the rationale they use, and of course that's not the rationale the framers had in mind for the general welfare. It's, for example, it reads, Congress shall be able to tax and spend for the general welfare of the United States. And that was defined, as Federalist 41 makes clear, by the enumerated ends or powers that followed immediately. the power to regulate commerce, the power to ensure free trade among the states, the power to create post roads and post offices, a navy, intellectual property, and so on and so forth. And so, here, let me put it to you this way, Gary. If there were, and this was Hamilton on this, if there were an independent power in Congress to tax and spend for the general welfare, as Hamilton held, not Madison, not Jefferson, not everybody else, then since money can be used to accomplish anything, then any time that Congress wanted to do something that was not authorized to it, because no power had been given to it with which to do it, it could simply say that it was taxing and spending for the, quote, general welfare, and make an end run around the doctrine of enumerated powers, the very centerpiece of the Constitution. Indeed, if that were the case, the framers could have stopped right there with one sentence, because then Congress could do anything it wants under that one grant of power. That couldn't possibly be what they meant.
So this is their way, and it's clear they're reinterpreting it so that they can get around the limitations the Founding Fathers put on the country. And frankly, in the last 100 years, they've done that, and it has turned the country in a direction I'm sure the Founding Fathers never expected. Roger Pilon is our guest. In just a minute, we got Fox News coming up, and when that's done, we'll bring Roger back. He is the founder and director of the Cato Institute Center for Constitutional Studies, and we're going to talk about changes in the Constitution and changes in its interpretation, and sometimes the impetus behind it. And you'll be surprised at how and where they think in Washington they got the power to do the things they do. And we'll find out what in Roger's interpretation of the Constitution is unconstitutional. All that coming up. Gary Nolan Show, Zimmer Radio Network.